Before I finish my cardigan project, I wanted to talk to you about the first time I made this. I mentioned when I first started looking at the yarn and planning this project that I had already woven this once, and I did. I wove it with sock yarn. I used sock yarn for the warp, and it was this beautiful hand-dyed color-changing sock yarn. And then I used a solid black mystery yarn from my stash as the weft after I had already sampled. I had actually mistakenly thought that a white weft was going to show up the colors in the warp yarn better, and the black did a much better job. And then, as I was working on the two front panels, I had just tiny small amounts left of the warp yarn, so I wove in stripes. And this, folks, is an example of how important it is to check your beat, your picks per inch frequently, because I had intended that these three weft stripes would line up, and you can see they very obviously do not. But live and learn, and every project gives you a chance to look at what you did and go, I could have done that better. And the way I could have done this better was to check my beat frequently to make sure that things were even, and to put together a reference strip like this. So another thing to note is that when you use your special yarn, your color changing yarn as the warp, you're going to end up wasting a lot of it. And when that's hand spun, that can be a little heartbreaking. So, but it also means that the most decisive color changes, if I had just not woven these horizontal stripes, the most decisive color changes would have been vertical instead of horizontal. And for most of us, horizontal lines aren't always, the best fashion choice. It depends. The last thing I want to point out is, again, I had just enough yarn left, just barely enough. Weaving does not use nearly as much yarn as knitting, and it uses way, way less yarn than crochet. Crochet is the most yarn-hoggy yarn craft out there. But I had just enough left to just do a row of single crochet up the front edge and around the collar. And I did a good job on these selvages, so I did not need it on the front edge, but where I really needed it was the neck edge, because even after zigzag stitching, the folded under edge is not the neatest thing. And on these front panels, where the cardigan flops open in a little V, that is really a problem. So it turned out that this was a good solution, and I do love this cardigan. I wore it just last night, and again, cleaned up with compliments the way I always do. But notice how very different it looks when you just change very simple things like the color pattern or the type of yarn. So this sock yarn, because it's a sock yarn, has a very reflective and consistent surface, whereas my hand spun is much fuzzier and much denser and not nearly as consistent. So the color patterning choices I made, I end up liking quite a lot, though it's worth pointing out that because I put this color at the bottom, it's actually going to draw attention down to the area closer to my waist, which is not always the thing you want when you're a woman of a certain age like me. However, this color next to my face would not have been as attractive. And I was careful with my selvages, but just by virtue of the fact that I used a different yarn, it finished differently. It puffed out, shrank, whatever it did in the dryer a little bit differently. And I am probably going to go back to my trick of crocheting an edge, though I might crochet an even bigger edge. The nature of this pattern makes it not a great choice to use a finishing technique that has a distinct right side and wrong side, because the collar opens up like this. So I will ponder for a while, and then I'll see what inspiration I come up with to do something fun. But even though these two cardis are the exact same pattern, woven in the exact same size and the exact same tunic length, because Lois's pattern gives you two options, a short crop length and a longer tunic length, they have a very different character, and they look very differently. Surface embellishment on this particular pattern would also be an option if you just wanted to weave in one color. Oh my gosh, you could make gorgeous embroidery patterns. So this is what my cardis look like when you put them next to each other. And as I said, when I finish this one, I will give you a chance to see what it looks like.